Hello friends, welcome to the current affairs analysis for 19th of February 2020. The Reserve Bank Governor Mr. Shaktikanta Das has said that the focus of government as well as RBI on the growth is intact and he will not let the non-banking finance companies to collapse. So there is a detailed interview of RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das in the Indian Express today, and he has affirmed the commitment of government as well as RBI on growth path. There are certain interesting observations in the interview. First of all, the retail inflation, which has jumped to 7.59% in January, is at a 68-month high. And it is because of the rising vegetable prices. So, there are two ways to measure inflation in India. First is by wholesale price index, and another is by consumer price index. So, wholesale price index measures the wholesale value of goods, whereas consumer price index measures the final value of final price of goods, and whereas the wholesale price index measures only the prices of goods, the consumer price index also measures the value of services. So consumer price index is a better representative of the inflation that is prevailing in the economy, and government of India had adopted consumer price index as a measure for measuring inflation years ago. So 5 to 6 years back, CPI was adopted as a measure to count inflation. So consumer price index is also known as retail inflation. So retail inflation was at a 7.59% and it is at a almost 6-year high. And in this context, let us understand what is the monetary policy framework of RBI. So according to the RBI, the inflation has to be maintained 4% plus minus 2%. That means the inflation has to be within the range of 2 to 6%. So if inflation goes below 2%, the RBI corrects the repo rate so that the inflation can increase, and if the inflation goes beyond 6%, the RBI increases the repo rate so that the lending becomes costlier and the lending is discouraged, and thereby inflation can be controlled. And now that the inflation is at 7.59%, this warrants that the Monetary Policy Committee should increase the repo rate so that the lending can be costlier and at the same time the inflation can come down. However, in the last monetary policy review, which is bi-monthly, the RBI did not reduce the repo rate. The reason for did not increase the repo rate, and the reason for that is that there is slowdown in the economy and lending has to be done at a lower interest rate so that people can be encouraged to borrow and there is revival of growth in the economy. So monetary policy is basically a double-edged sword which has to be used to maintain a balance between inflation and growth. Although the RBI has been mandated to follow a inflation control path, RBI is directed to target inflation, but growth also cannot be ignored. Similarly, in another news, the food grain production for the year 2019-20 is expected to be at an all-time high. So there is bumper crop which is expected at 291.95 million tons. This is the data which has been released by the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. And since this is going to be a bumper harvest, it is going to be a fiscal and political challenge for the center, because more food grains procurement means higher food subsidy bill, and if there is any reluctance on this front by the government, it will invite the anger of farmers. So the second advanced estimates of production of food grains for this year have shown that it is expected to be near around 291.95 million tons, which was 285.21 million tons for the previous year, and this will lead to spurt in the food subsidy bill or burden on the central government, which is not a good sign because in the current year we are already witnessing economic slowdown and the government has already shot off its fiscal deficit target. Therefore, this is a significant news. The Secretary to the President has been named the new Chief Vigilance Commissioner of India. So, the Secretary to the President of India, Mr. Sanjay Kothari, has been named as the Chief Vigilance Commissioner, and the committee which is responsible for selecting the Chief Vigilance Commissioner includes the Prime Minister of India, the Speaker of Lok Sabha, and the leader of the largest opposition party in Lok Sabha. This is a very significant point because 6 years back, this was not the composition of the committee, because the third member was the leader of opposition in Lok Sabha. So there is a difference between leader of opposition in Lok Sabha and the leader of largest opposition party in Lok Sabha. Because when we say that a person should be a leader of opposition, according to the rules of Lok Sabha, that party should command at least 10% of seats in the Lok Sabha. So if there are 550 total seats in the Lok Sabha, that means any opposition party that has at least 55 members of parliament in the Lok Sabha, the leader of that particular party in the house should be granted the title of leader of opposition. But since the Congress party in the last Lok Sabha elections got 48 seats, and in the last year's Lok Sabha elections got 44 seats, both times it did not qualify to have a leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha. So for that purpose, this act was amended and the name of leader of opposition was changed to leader of largest opposition party in Lok Sabha, so that the leader of Congress in the Lok Sabha can at least qualify to become a panel member for selection of Chief Vigilance Commissioner. And in pursuance to that, the member of Congress, Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, has been on the panel. But in this particular news item, Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary expressed his dissent to the selection of Mr. Sanjay Kothari as the new Chief Vigilance Commissioner and Ms. Bimla Julka as Mr. Bimal Julka as the next Chief Information Commissioner. So it has been decided by majority. The Prime Minister and Lok Sabha Speaker agreed to their names, whereas the leader of largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha, Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, did not agree to it. So this has been an important news item. So a key group of Financial Action Task Force has told the Financial Action Task Force not to remove Pakistan from the grey list. So this is Financial Action Task Force is an international organization which was established in 1989 at the instance of the G7. So the major tasks of Financial Action Task Force are to curb terror financing and to curb money laundering. So these are the two major mandates of Financial Action Task Force. And every year there is a plenary of Financial Action Task Force in which it decides whether a country is to be grey listed or blacklisted. So last year, Pakistan was put on the grey list of Financial Action Task Force because there are 27-point charters which have to be followed by every country to show that it is acting tough on terror financing front. But Pakistan was found to follow only 5 points out of those 27 points. That's why it was grey listed. And this year also, the subgroup of Financial Action Task Force has recommended that Islamabad should continue to be on the grey list for its failure to check terror funding. So 2 days back, there was a news item which we discussed that the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar has been missing in Pakistan. This is what Pakistan has submitted to the Financial Action Task Force. So because of such kind of adventurisms and because of such kind of tacit support to terrorism and terrorism financing, Pakistan has continued to be on a grey list. India has recommended that the country should be put to the blacklist because of its dismal record to curb terror financing and money laundering. So this final decision will be taken on Friday. We will take it up in this space. So which international organization was instrumental in establishing Financial Action Task Force? So it was established in 1989 at the instance of G7. So G7 countries include United States of America, UK, France, Canada, Italy, Germany, and Japan. So these are the G7 countries. So if we add Russia to this, it becomes G8, but Russia was expelled from the grouping because of the annexation of Crimea in 2014. So now it is just a G7. So G7 in 1989 had established Financial Action Task Force to curb money laundering and terror financing. Its headquarters are in Paris, and more than 48 countries are members of Financial Action Task Force. So rupee has dived 22 paisa against dollar as the coronavirus disease takes toll on markets. So for the first time, the coronavirus disease has shown that it can have a huge impact on economy all around the world. With companies like Apple and HSBC having declared that coronavirus outbreak is going to impact their revenues in the coming months, the stock markets around the world have seen a declining trend. And in India, particularly, the coronavirus outbreak and the AGR dues of telecom companies, the adjusted gross revenue dues of telecom companies, around 1.53 lakh crore rupees. These are the two major concerns which have led to the reduction in rupees value against the dollar, and which have led to the downfall in the major stock indices around the world. So Bharti Airtel was the biggest loser, and Vodafone Idea too saw its shares tanking more than 16% in intraday trade. So Vodafone and Airtel are the two biggest losers in the AGR dues battle. And coronavirus disease, which has been an outbreak in the Wuhan city of the Hubei province of China, has also seen the world markets crashing. So this is the reason why the rupee has dived 22 paisa against the dollar. So this is how in a globalized world, a disease that is spread in one part of a one country can impact the entire world. So it started in the Wuhan city of Hubei province of China, and it is a zoonotic infection, which means it spreads from animals to humans, and it leads to a spike in the glycoprotein levels in the cells, which reduces the immunity, and it ultimately leads to death. The World Health Organization has already declared it as a public health emergency of international concern, and many countries, including US, Japan, and China, have and US, Japan, and India have already evacuated many of its citizens from the Wuhan city and Hubei province of China. So coronavirus disease till now has affected more than 70,000 people in around the entire world, and it has led to more than 1900 deaths throughout the world. Majorly out of these, more than 1800 or 1700 deaths have been only in the Wuhan city. So this has been the epicenter of this outbreak. Thank you, friends. This has been the news analysis for 19th February 2020.